And I thank all of you, Qui-Gon bowed. He started to turn to leave, only to gesture with his hands. Help one person. A Jedi needs no permission for that. That's the quote for the day. Qui-Gon is the inspiration for most of the story that happens in this book. Peace, knowledge, serenity, harmony, force! Welcome to Billy's Books. Today's book is yet another Star Wars book. It is The Living Force by John Jackson Miller. This is a Star Wars book that happens directly before Episode 1, Phantom Menace, or a few years before, I guess I should say. But anyway, it definitely precedes it closely. The closest thing to come before Phantom Menace of all the books and stuff that's been released. So basically, Qui-Gon Jinn, who is Obi-Wan's master, as you know, has come back, and he's sort of placed. He threw the mantle down, or threw the whatever down to the Jedi Council, saying, "Y'all in your ivory tower, you're doing a great job, but you need to be in touch with the people more." And they're like, "Oh, blah, 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 perhaps you're right, perhaps you're right." So they all decide to go to this. They decide to re-engage. Because he's like, all these big thoughts and stuff, you forget about it, but there's nothing stopping you from helping individuals. A lot of Jedi outposts are being closed down because there's less activity on those planets, either because of the economy or other reasons, and the money from the Republic can't go everywhere, so some places are getting closed down. And there's one particular planet called Quen that they're all very attached to. A couple centuries before had gone downhill, and the Jedis went out of their way to go there and fix it back up, and it's declining again. But so many of them have sentimental attachments to it, they decide that they're going to go back. Every member of the Jedi Council, or almost every member of the Jedi Council, is going to go back there and do that. And so they all descend upon it, and they're gonna have a big celebration. The premise is they're going to have a big celebration on that planet to celebrate its anniversary, 200 years or whatever, of the revitalization. But a lot of them get caught in adventures on the way. So there's a whole bunch of Jedis whose name you've heard of before, and you think, oh, they're all on the cover, especially Yoda's on top and stuff because he's the big kahuna. But you don't really the Jedi, the Yoda stories and the Obi-Wan stories are actually relatively minimal to some other characters that are in this book. But going back to the beginning, the first scene we do is Qui-Gon Jinn and Obi-Wan, and you get the sense that Qui-Gon Jinn has the touch of the people, but Obi-Wan is still kind of maybe a little posh, and he keeps on saying, "Yo, Master, you're so much better at this. You have the common touch. I don't." And Qui-Gon is like, right there, the term common touch. Every being is your better, Obi-Wan. Remember that. And service becomes second nature. That's his advice to Obi-Wan. And so then later on, Obi-Wan tries to do his more common touch, and it's sort of manifested with him going, "Hello there!" Which I guess is, that's him trying to be relatable, because I guess anyway, it's funny. Nonetheless, everybody in the Jedi Council and just in general, he's still a Padawan in this, of course, and he's everybody loves him because he's so charming and everything. And there's a lot of fun and clever patter as they go through adventures, similar but maybe a little less mischievous than the clever patter that Obi-Wan would have later with Anakin. So it's funny. One of the planets they go to, I think it is also Quen. They visit a planet, and they take a taxi through town. But in fact, when they get in the taxi, it's really dangerous, and they realize, wait a minute, that's not a taxi. That's not a driving droid. That's a protocol droid. It's like imagining C-3PO driving your taxi or something. Oh, he does a terrible job. And they're like, what's up with that? And it's like, well, all the droids got reassigned because of reallocation of funds, which is just, and so everybody who isn't a Jedi harps on the Jedi for abandoning them. The good guys and the bad guys who are not Jedi both, they're all like, oh, well, we're just expecting the Jedi to leave as soon as they're done. They say they're for us, but they're not always here. That is the overall thing of all these things, of all these planets, is that, the Jedi promise to be there, but they're often not. And so people are left on their own, and these people resent that. The planet Quen, again, we were talking about before. One of the things that the Jedi did to revitalize that planet 200 years ago, it was an industrial wasteland, and they cleaned it up. And one of the things they did with all the industrial waste, or just garbage, landfill and stuff, is they they put them all together and built islands, because it's a water planet. So they built big islands or keys throughout, and then they connected them with infrastructure. And different keys would have different sort of things, like some were still industrial, but some were agricultural, and some were, the Jedi outpost is on the biggest one at the highest point. They actually, every evening or morning, I forget which, they would light the fire, and it's called the unquenchable fire, representing, I suppose, the Force, or the wonder of the Galactic Republic, or whatever. The unquenchable fire is on one of the Quen keys where the Jedi outpost, and what happens is it's a beautiful sight that can be seen by most of the keys around, so people will gather at dusk or whatever to see the the unquenchable fire lit, and it's sort of like an evening ceremony. It's sort of a ritual they do every day, and the fire goes and everyone goes, oh, it's so beautiful, and they go to bed or whatever they do, have dinner. So some of the other adventures that happen to some of the Jedi before they make it to Quen, there's one, Depa Bilaba. She had sent one of, not her Padawans, but somebody she was training nonetheless, but she didn't have a Padawan because she didn't want to get too emotionally attached to this person. She said, oh, well, since you're not my Padawan, I'll send you, but she's still attached. Which is bad, and so that person got captured and maybe killed, we don't know, and so she went after him, and then she got caught by one of the bad people. There's a bunch of gangs, and the leader of one of the gangs is called Zilastra, or Zil for short, and she has it in for the Jedi. She captures this, using her cunning, she actually manages to capture this Jedi and sort of keep her by sort of holding her in that suspension thing that you saw Obi-Wan captured in one of the movies. And then she'll just play the shrill the whole time, so she can't concentrate, and she holds him there for several days. But then this Jedi, Deepa, she's like, normally I can figure out what to do based on their motives, but she doesn't have any motive. Her motive is just to capture me and torture me. That she doesn't have an end game, or this is the end game, and so there's nothing clever I can do, and it really frustrates her. And so basically Zilastra's goal is just cruelty, and she uses that cruelty to prove her dominance to the other gangs, and that's sort of her thing. And so one of the gang members who works for her is there were these 3 thugs. And one of those thugs is named the Lobber, and which always reminds me of the lobster. But we don't really know why he's called the Lobber until this quote that I just found. I'm going to end with this. So there's all sorts of adventures. How do I feel about this? It's kind of a scatterbrain story. I'm not really sure. It's got a lot of stories going on. It's just more infilling. You get more insight into the personalities of Yoda a little bit. And Qui-Gon Jinn and Obi-Wan and Mace Windu. We see into his mind too. There's another Mace Windu book coming up, and I'm looking forward to reading that as well. Anyway, so maybe it's a maybe. It has some clever writing. Anyway, my quote to end the story is from the Lobber. I know grenades. Why do you think they call me the Lobber? If you can't do, review.